committee. And then we will return to public session only for the consideration of approval of collective bargaining agreements, and hopefully adjourn sometime by about 7:50. And with that, we will move right in. I will see if anyone is here for public comment. If anyone is here for public comment, if you would please raise your digital hand and we will elevate you for public comment. Seeing none, we will move on. Dr. Hackett, do you have any superintendent remarks this evening?
I do not.
I would just, given that this is our last meeting of 2022, wish everyone a happy break and hope that everyone is safe and healthy. And I remind students and families that I believe you will be able to pick up test kits at the schools before you go home for break, if you choose to do so. And I think that is all I have this evening. Did any of the other school committee members have anything that they wanted to add at this time?
I would just add that there's a lot of things beyond COVID going around, flu and RSV and strep and other things. So it's a good time to wear a mask if you're traveling in public places, and have a safe holiday.
Thanks, Mr. Hopcroft. And then on the consent agenda, we had some gifts. Dr. Hackett, did you want to pull up that?
I was slow to unmute, Madam Chair. While the Dr. Hackett's pulling that up, may I just make one public service announcement?
Sure, go for it.
So we will be, the EFPBC is holding its last public informational meeting on January 3rd regarding the Lynch project. That'll be virtual rather than in person. We did an in-person one at Lynch last week, and Mr. Mucci was able to be there with us. But we'll try to work out the schedule with Rich in hopes he can join us virtually. But we're planning on going from, I think we agreed, Dr. Hackett, at 6 to 7:30. That's not posted yet, so we'll be getting that information out in the next couple of days, just as one last opportunity for folks to join us. And we will be able to incorporate some kind of late breaking news that came from the MSBA this week as well. That's pretty good for us to be able to share. So just folks should stay tuned and look for that announcement, but one more public information meeting on January 3rd.
And Mr. Nixon, you remind me that this will probably be our last school committee meeting before the vote on Lynch Elementary School on Saturday, January 7th. And we just want to remind people to, as always, get out and vote. And that that is a Saturday, and voting is available by early voting and by mail at the town clerk's office, correct?
Yes, absentee, I think she officially calls it. And then for folks who either are out of state or will be out of state, so long as you can represent that you will be, you can vote as well. So I have a kiddo who's actually going to be voting in her very first election, and she's going to be out of the country on January 6th. So she's looking forward to casting her vote in the next couple of days.
That first one's always exciting. What a good first vote.
I'm taking pictures. Anyway, thank you.
And so I'll move into our consent agenda items. One is a very generous donation for the Excel program in memory of Brenda Martino. Excuse me. And we are grateful for that donation in her memory. And Dr. Hackett, the second donation was right for an alumni donation as well. Another generous donation for the
and this was to the Battle Bus Club.
So I'm happy to take a motion on both those consent agenda items.
Make a motion to accept both gifts with gratitude.
Second.
All in favor? I have to do roll call because we're on Zoom. Mr. Brady.
Aye.
Ms. Bolanese.
Aye.
Mr. Nixon.
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous. And with that, we will move into a presentation by Mr. Mucci of the Select Board, who has asked to come to speak to us tonight about question 2, which will also be on the ballot on January 7th, and that is a $400,000 operating override in support of traffic improvements in and around Lynch Elementary School. Mr. Mucci, I'll let you take it away.
Mr. Wisher, do you need to share your screen at all?
That'd be great.
Okay,
Thanks,
Andrew, can
Dr.
you?
Hackett.
And I am going to mute my.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. I appreciate it. I'm glad I popped on early. Town Manager Beth Rudolph is present as well, so she can certainly talk about this as well from the engineering standpoint or from the town management standpoint. So I do have a short presentation. I'm not sure. I know some of you have been at the different informational sessions, maybe listening to the select board meetings. I'm not sure how much of the tool presentation you've caught. So I did prepare something just short. We have some updated renderings as well. So if I could just show that.
Should be all set.
Thanks. Can everyone see that? All right. So, Michelle gave a good introduction of question 2. It's a general override question for $400,000 to be used to fund the Lynch School traffic improvements. If you remember back in the spring of 2022, town meeting approved $75,000 for a traffic study in the general area on the Pond Street corridor side and the Hornbrook Pond side of Lynch. And that study was complete in the spring and summer of this year. Those results were presented to the select board in the fall, and the select board unanimously decided to put a general override question on the ballot in order to fund the debt service necessary to complete those projects, which total a little over $2.9 million at this point in time, based on the concepts that have been presented. The Lynch traffic improvements designated by Tool Design, which is our traffic engineer firm that we've used in the past for several projects. They basically looked at location, crash history, volumes, numbers, input from the public, and identified these 12 projects that they deem necessary in order to make safe passage for biking and walking and to help ease traffic and control speed in both the Lynch and Pond Street side of the new Lynch project. On the Pond Street side, I'll say most of the improvements are for walkability and improving intersection turning radius. And certainly further study is necessary on the Pond Street speed side of things, but certainly this is a step in the right direction to address that busy avenue. I'm just going to go through the projects real fast. You can see if you look at these, and you probably have seen these before, but there's like a cartoon, part, and that's the new area that will be undertaken during construction. And you can see that this is the Pond Street Woodside Chesterford intersection on the top there. These are the bump outs. The idea here being those crosswalks are pretty long at this point, and to narrow the turning radius as well, so people don't necessarily just speed into the turn. They actually have to stop and turn and make sure that kids aren't necessarily in a long crosswalk, that they don't necessarily need to be in. So shortening crosswalks and improving turning radiuses would help, keep these intersections safe. You can see the Woodside intersection below, but I actually have a kind of a rendering of what that would look like. You can see the bump outs that we're creating with the appropriate ramps and you can see a little speed median strip there to prevent cars from basically turning off of Pond Street and essentially just accelerating. They're going to have to actually stop and turn around that rather than just going through it. You can see In this picture, this is the big raised crosswalk that we have planned for the Horn Pond Brook Road intersection right in front of the school. And also down below, you see raised crosswalks on Royal Street and Sylvester Avenue. This is what this would look like in front of the school. Certainly a raised crosswalk to control speed, bump outs to make this crosswalk shorter, and just a safer area for kids to cross. You can see on the right side, that's the proposed, I believe, footbridge to the new elementary school that would certainly tie into these improvements as well. Moving on to Canal Street and Middlesex. If you've driven down Middlesex Street, you see where that Horn Pond Brook kind of jets out where the bike path is. It's right now just a giant paved area that kids have to essentially walk in the middle of the street for some time. This would close that up, creating a continuous sidewalk. It would also add a continuous sidewalk on the other side of Middlesex Street, and also add some raised crosswalks as well to control speed on this straight area. This is what those raised crosswalks would look like at the intersection of Canal and Middlesex Street. And then finally, on the Lake Street side, we would improve two crossing areas, one at the entrance of Middlesex Street, tighten that up so it's not as long, adding bump outs for pedestrian safety, and also by the DPW building, that roadway right there, that I believe is Linden Street, that kids routinely walk to school along that route as well. And then finally below, you'll see one more raised crosswalk on Middlesex Street. So all in all, these projects, these 10 projects, Tool gave us a tier system of what they felt was the greatest priority. And you can see tier 1 involved the 2 on Royal Street, Middlesex Street, and the school zone, speed and radar devices that would be installed in the area. And those total about $1.27 million. Then tier 2 was the Pond Street at Brantwood and Pond Street at Woodside intersections. And you can see the costs associated with that. Each of these tiers has a built-in 25% construction and engineering, construction services and engineering number, and a 15% police detail. So they are pretty comprehensive numbers at this point. And then tier 3, you see the other intersections on Pond Street and at Chesterford and Norfolk, Middlesex Street at Horn Pond Brook Road, and what that would cost, $745,000. And then tier 4, Middlesex traffic calming measures, Lake Street at Middlesex Street and Lake Street at Main Street and Linden, and what those costs would be, about $547,000. All in all, these costs add up to that $2.9 million number. I believe the select board felt that all these projects are worthy of doing at this time. As you know, the select board in 2018 created a policy that anytime we did a new school building project such as this, based on the lessons learned from VO in the middle school, that we undertake a traffic study and look at improvements in the general vicinity to help with walking and pedestrian and bike safety. And also, given the nature of the school, that it's, I think, about 23% larger, and we're bringing back the preschool to this area, I think the select board felt it was important that we address, an already congested area and try to encourage and make it safer for kids and families to walk to school and bike to school as an alternative means, with the hope that it might ease traffic in this area as well with this larger school. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And I'm happy to answer questions about the projects itself at this point. And then certainly I can get in to how we're financing this project if members have questions about that. It is a general override question. I know that's been a hot topic for a number of individuals. The select board felt that this was the best funding mechanism at this point for this type of project. And certainly anytime you have an override question such as this, it's essentially a public referendum. So If the public votes yes, those funds would go into the capital stabilization funds. I would hope that the capital committee, although I can't guarantee it, would honor the public's will and the public vote and put forth at town meeting to appropriate this money for these projects. Same, I would hope the town meeting would honor the will of the general public and the vote that a majority voted yes to support this. They did so in order to do these projects. These are necessary safety projects, in my opinion. Certainly, with the nature of the school, how large it is in this area that's already congested, as someone who, as Chris probably knows, his daughter was in preschool at the same time, sent a child there for about 4 years. I think this is long overdue for this area. And the concern is with this new building and the size and scope of it, it will only add to the congestion if we don't make it more comfortable and safer for kids to walk and ride, and hopefully entice people to take advantage of those alternative means of getting to school every day. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I just wanted to remind the committee also of how we got here. Mr. Mucci, you talked about it a little bit, but when we built Vincent Owen Elementary School, we ended up with an intersection that required a traffic light following that building project being completed, that then took quite some time in order to improve for the kids and families of the VO neighborhood. And it's made an incredible difference there, but it was a little bit of a long involved process involving safe routes to school and a lot of other work to get that done after the elementary school was already in place. And I believe that is what spurred the select board to create the policy that when we do building projects, that they go out in this way to seek traffic improvements in the area alongside the building of the new schools. And we did see that happen very successfully at McCall, is I think the part that Mr. Mucci didn't really highlight quite enough is that that there were quite some big projects along Mystic Valley Parkway and on Main Street in front of McCall that have made that immeasurably safer for kids and families walking to school and dropping kids off. So we've seen the success of what happens when we do the traffic improvements in collaboration with new building projects. And so that is why Mr. Mucci is here tonight, is because we do have the new Lynch Elementary School opening. Select Board has instituted the policy of doing a traffic study and committing to traffic improvements with new school building projects. So he has asked us to consider whether we can support this project in that way. So please do, if you have questions about either the projects or the funding, please step forward and I will direct you to Mr. Mucci, Mr. Hopcroft.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mucci, for coming and sharing this with us tonight. I particularly appreciate the select board's leadership in creating this policy, which leads to looking at the traffic around the schools each time we do one of these projects. As a Lynchy parent myself, I'm really supportive of doing traffic improvements in the area. And I appreciate your noting that additional work, beyond the walkability work that you've done here, needs to be done with regard to speed on Pond Street, because that's a real issue. I related to that and to all of this, just on the design piece, which was your first question. I wanted to just note, I like what's in the design. The one thing that's not in the design that I think would be helpful for you guys to consider is on the Brantwood Street side, as traffic is turning onto Pond Street. It's a really difficult place given that speed. And so two things: I think it needs a traffic light, and I think it needs an extra lane, so you have a left turn lane because traffic backs up. The improvements you're doing will help because cars won't be able to come quite so quickly off of Woodside onto Pond, but it's really hard to get out of there, and particularly with the existing and new bus loops on that side. I think that's just an area, if you could look at that a little bit more. The school is going to be also a bigger school, more students, integrated pre-K. So I think that's just something to think about on that side. The The area though of question I have is, given my position and how important I think this work is, and that we do this each time we do a school, I want to make sure it happens. And I'm a little bit unclear on sort of the methodology here with the override and how, just maybe you can help educate me a little bit on these different, the debt exclusion versus the general override. But it strikes me that it goes into a queue with every other thing that needs to happen in town, and in my view, this is the most important thing. But if fire truck breaks down or something, it seems that there are other things that if you put it up against every priority in our town, how do we know that this will get funded? I guess is the question.
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate the question, and certainly we'll look at, we're always striving to improve traffic, and traffic improvements around town. It seems every week we certainly hear something from someone about different traffic improvements that need to be made. So we'll certainly look at Brantwood, as you've stated here. In terms of general versus debt exclusion override, certainly I can appreciate that there's risk that people have brought up, and concern that maybe this wouldn't get funded if it just went into the capital stabilization fund. And I can't speak for the capital committee. Certainly they control the money, but I can tell you that the select board feels that this is a priority project, so much so that they've gone and added it to a public referendum for a vote in January as a general override question. And I would hope that the capital committee and town meeting would honor the will of the people, because certainly if you're voting yes for this, you're voting to do it with the understanding that these improvements around Lynch would be the primary source of in project use for this funding. So certainly there's always risk, but I think if the people in the town and the residents support this, I hope that the capital committee and town meeting eventually would honor that request. Why it wasn't a debt exclusion override was, quite frankly, is because four other members on my board thought it was, a better general override question than a debt exclusion question. They thought that after 15 years, after the debt service expired on this project, that certainly those funds would help with what we plan to roll out in the spring, which would be a capital plan to address the capital needs of the town. So this is just one piece of that, but certainly, if this was to go forward, the idea would be that this would fund the debt service for this project, and it would be tied up for the next 15 years. So hopefully that answers as best I can your question. There's anything to do, but it's the funding mechanism for this project. At this point, it's either we do it this way, or frankly, I don't see another path to get it funded.
Okay. Can I follow up?
Go ahead.
So Toole talked about a phased approach or a tiered approach. Actually, they didn't say phased. They said there were different priority tiers. So what I'm hearing from you, I believe, I'm asking if this is correct. So the whatever entity, whether it's select board or whomever, with capital, someone, we have this override passes. You're going to go bond the entire 3 million to do all of it, or are you going to? Because I heard you say we'll pay it out over 15 years, and so I'm hopeful that you're saying that whoever honors the request of the people and stuff is going to fund the entire project, all four tiers, or is it something that they might just fund one tier and like how does that work with this?
So if this passes, the select board would be the proponent, whether it's at Capitol or town meeting with Capitol, would be to fund the entire project, the entire $3 million. Now, certainly, as we've in the fall, and I think Tom, you might have been a part of it because you live over in that area. We're getting good suggestions from from residents in the area about, maybe a flashing beacon here, or you should look at this intersection. So we anticipate that, as a baseline, these would be the projects that we would move forward. It's highly likely that we might, add additional, pieces here and there. But the goal is to do all these projects. That's why the select board put such a number on as a general override question, because the debt service on it is estimated at this point to be around $300,000. With construction costs escalating, and I have to see where I sit, I haven't seen a project come in on budget, in the last, 8 or 9 months. So assuming that inflation continues to rise, and cost of construction go up, there's extra design services and maybe, a couple of tweaks here and there on different projects, maybe an intersection added, maybe a flashing beacon added somewhere. I think this 400,000 is a reasonable number to encompass the entire project. So the tier was something that we asked Tool to present, if we were to do this in phases. But I think given that this school is not going to be built in phases and that it's going to open its doors, when it does, that we need to be ready and have the infrastructure ready. I think Michelle is very articulately pointed out that this is lessons learned, and we're trying to be proactive. We don't do these school building projects very often, so we've learned lessons especially from BO. And it was funny, on Monday we had, by coincidence, we had Ridge Street neighbors in on a public hearing about a crosswalk. And how the kids try to up past, I think it's Fieldstone, how they get to school and how they want a crosswalk on both sides. And it's those types of conversations that are great to have proactively now before the school's built, rather than being reactive, and having VO got lucky with that traffic light on the grant funding as well. So hopefully, if we're proactive about this, we can create a safe route, initially when the doors open of the school.
Mr. Nixon, I see you've unmuted. Did you have a question?
Okay.
And we'll come back to you, Mr. Hopcroft.
Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity.
I have some questions and a comment, but I was going to wait until Mr. Hopcroft was done.
I just one last thing, if I could so this is a 15-year thing. The new Morocco building will presumably be done in that time. And I was just curious, like, what the thinking is for that. I know this is sort of an indefinite thing, so maybe it goes into a fund that can fund other things, but I don't think it'll be done paying the debt service on this before that building. So that was my last thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball on that. There's a lot of balls in the air where Morocco falls in line, but certainly I think the select board is showing you with this project that any school project or building project that we move forward, that we're serious about doing these traffic studies and looking at the neighborhoods and making sure that the infrastructure is there when the doors open. Because I think in the past, we necessarily haven't been able to do that. We haven't had the funding to do that at times. So this is forward thinking, something new. And hopefully, I can appreciate there's technicalities to the funding, and people may not appreciate it and how the select board has chosen to the path to do this. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the project. We're trying to create safe routes for kids to walk and bike to school and ease traffic and ease a congested area and slow down cars. And at the end of the day, we don't necessarily have the funding to do this at this point, and we're putting it out to the voters to decide. And hopefully they agree and they're willing to go into their pockets, which would be about $56 a year, in order to help fund this.
Well, thank you. It's definitely a worthy project. So thank you for bringing it, and thank you, Mr. Nixon, for the allowing me to do the last question, and Ms. Bergstrom.
So Michelle, if can I share screen just for a moment?
Sure.
Or maybe I already can.
Ken.
Let me see. So those great sort of higher res images that Rich was sharing tonight, Beth shared those with me over the weekend. So those are now up on the website. I'm going to be updating the homepage of the Lynch 2025 website with some of these images that are kind of scrolling in a carousel. That message will be more focused on the community information meeting on the 3rd, and then of course the vote. So I just want to remind, I don't know that I've shared this with the committee. I know the EFPBC is aware. This information has for a while now been sitting on the swing space traffic and safety page, but we made a point of elevating this. So there's an explanation here of the work that Tool did. There's a link right here that will bring you to the information sessions that Ms. Rudolph had with the community. There were 2 sessions, well, I think on October 18th. The question here for question 2 is posed along with some of the images, but I appreciate Beth sending those along, and I'll do a little more work on the website this week. So having said that, so I guess I have a couple of things I want to say. I'm very conflicted right now, so I want to be very clear about one thing. So I'm going to take off my school committee hat and just put on the hat that says I'm a registered voter on Forest Street. I'm voting yes on question 2. I think it's really important. I've had 2 kids that were there at the preschool, and I visited there a lot since, and I understand how challenging the traffic is. And I think we need to make some improvements. So I personally support this a lot. But as I think Mr. Hopcroft was beginning to touch on, and Rich did to a degree as well, we have many, many capital needs, not just in the town, but okay, I'm putting my school committee hat back on selfishly. We have a lot of school capital needs. So as you know, we have like $1.3 million in needs and flat work at Lincoln. We're looking to do an investigation for a new roof at Ambrose. We're assuming that's 1 to 1.2. We're going to need to do a roof at McCall, many things. And although I don't know what was said tonight, when the board was voting, kind of trying to pick that number for the debt service, the expectation, I'm assuming this is still the case, is that once the debt service is paid off for this neighborhood traffic work, then that sort of easing of that burden, if you will. The idea being, Mr. Hopcroft, that the stabilization fund would basically be covering the debt service for a period of time, and we do that. We can't do it indefinitely, or else we have like no money left for projects. We're just sort of writing checks for bigger things, but we do that. I think the expectation is that there would be enough money then left over to bond something on the scale of a school roof. We will absolutely have to replace the roof at Ambrose and McCall long before the debt service is paid off, but that's sort of not the point, because there would be some bolus of money there. I thought Mr. McPeak, though, did a really good job when he and Mr. Johnston appeared before the select board in explaining that, the capital planning committee doesn't really know anything about this yet. I mean, some members do, some individuals do. And he was sort of cautioning, and I appreciate Mr. Mucci made this point tonight, it's impossible to know what the priorities would be of the capital planning committee in any given year, given, whether, a bridge falls down or the fire truck breaks and so forth. So there's that. I suppose there's some risk there. I guess I have 2 questions for you, Rich, tonight. To the degree you can, and I appreciate you sharing when the board sort of really at the 11th hour pivoted from a debt exclusion override to an operating override. I know it was the other 4 that were in favor of the change. Could you maybe share with us what your specific concerns were around going towards an operating override? And do you feel sort of the same or a little differently today, whatever those concerns might be? And then the second question would be, given all those other capital needs, I mean, I've put $6-7 million of HVAC needs at Town Hall. That's really important. And there are many others. What is the current thinking around, is there still an interest in like bundling a larger debt exclusion override to address both town and school needs, and any sense of timing for that?
Yeah, Chris, thanks. So yes, I was the one dissenting member on the select board that wanted to see a debt exclusion override for these, only because I thought it's an easier sell, which it's, frankly, which is frankly true, to be honest, to be candid. But it doesn't, but certainly if I had to choose between doing the project or not as a general override, I choose doing the project anytime and doing the general override question and supporting it. So that was an easy decision for me. But at the time, I just, I worried about, questions that would be asked and, certainly worried about, selling a general override question. They're a lot harder to sell historically in this town than a debt exclusion project override. So, but it doesn't detract from what I think is the ultimate question is we need to do this, and we need to do this as infrastructure improvements. Frankly, it's long overdue. And the fact that this school is going to be, much larger, makes me think that, this is the highest priority. We're building a brand new $94 million school in this town. We need to prepare the infrastructure around it to accommodate that. And I can appreciate that there are other priorities out there, but certainly, children's safety and is the highest. So I would say that you could pick any priority in this town, whether it's school roofs, HVAC, other dangerous intersections in town. There certainly exist, but this would be right up there with it because we're talking about kids walking to school. And anytime a parent sends a kid out the door with a bike, especially an elementary school kid, or walking a younger sibling, you want them to be able to do that with peace of mind that we have the infrastructure in place in order to get them there safely. So I see no greater priority in this town. In terms of what I think you're alluding to is, Roger's presentation at Fall Town Meeting, which I certainly don't disagree with, and our capital planning. We're at the early stages of that right now. And what I do plan to do is have the select board present at Springtown Meeting a capital plan. It'll probably be to take about $5 million out of the school budget in order to fund capital improvements. But that would get us out of the hole. I guess no one thought that was funny, so I'll tough crowd. But no, we need to.
It's not April 1st yet, Richard.
Who knows as a joke.
We need to come up with a plan, and we're doing that. It's been in the elephant in the room in this town for years now, and we're going to address it. We're going to come up with a plan, and we're going to work with our stakeholders, including you on this committee, in order to do that. And will it be a perfect plan? No, but it will hopefully get us to where we need to get and start addressing these issues.
So I appreciate that very much, Rich, and thank you. I think one of the challenges in the way the question is worded, and I know it's worded on the advice of town council, is it doesn't specifically say anything about Lynch or the neighborhood traffic. It's written the way it's written, for that very reason. So I hope folks get sort of educated on question 2 and understand sort of what underpins it. And I hope that a concern that your colleague, Mr. Fallon, voiced one night, which I thought was really interesting, was that a concern, I'm paraphrasing only to a degree, I think, that there will be folks who are going to remember there was a question, something about an override for capital stabilization, and I voted for it. And then sometime in the not too distant future, there will be another override for capital, and it'll be a bigger one for a whole lot more stuff that's also really important. And his hope was that people didn't kind of conflate the two and say, wait a minute, why are you asking me this? I already voted, I already voted for this. So however the chips fall on the 7th, and I hope it's yes on both questions, I think it'll just be really important for us on the subject of communication and messaging to kind of remind people, what it is that passed and why, and what was not on the plate and what really remains on the plate, so that nobody begins to kind of create their own reality about what that was for. Because I think Mr. Fallon actually raised a really good point. And those of us who are participating in this meeting right now, we are so wired into what happens in this town, and we're the outliers because so many people don't really understand how it all works. So really important, I think, to just keep the communication flowing.
And I see your hand, Ms. Rudolph. I want to make sure, Ms. Bolognese or Mr. Brady, you don't have any questions before I go to Ms. Rudolph. And Ms. Bolognese, just thumbs up, Karen, unless you have a question.
I think she's working with a child's technology tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, about like that in my son's room. I was just going to ask, could you remind me how we had funded the traffic improvements for McCall?
I can take a partial stab at that, but I think Beth was pretty
I thought
close.
there
to
was a
I
that.
was just saying, I think Beth's got her hand up, so I bet she can take that and
Yay.
give her question at the same time. So excellent timing. Go
Can
ahead,
I
Mrs.
offer just, it was funded in two, maybe Beth can speak to the second piece. The first piece was we added about $500,000 to the debt exclusion override for the McCall Phase 2 expansion project. That was about a $10.5 million project-ish. And we added $500,000. That was to not only work ultimately with Tool to come up with some concepts, but hopefully have something left over to get something going. And we did, we had some, maybe 100 grand or what, some, I mean, Tool took a lot of that money just on the design side. But then once the town kind of had that plan, was able to identify what the needs were and it get some plans and detailed estimates, then the town kind of had the basis to go out and then fund the rest of it, which is totally up Beth's alley to describe.
I'll be honest, I think it was matched with capital funds, wasn't it? We didn't get a grant for the McCall School work. I know it was funded, it was split between two sources, but it was not outside funding that funded the, and it was not like a grant funding that funded the second part of McCall.
We did send some capital dollars for the Mystic Valley, and I remember we had like a separate conversation around Maine and Washington, but I just couldn't remember, Beth, if that entirely came from capital or not.
Yeah, I think it was split between the project and capital.
No, we did not have a Safe Routes to School grant either, Beth.
No,
You're-
no. The only Safe Routes to School grant we've gotten is for the VO school.
Did that answer your question, Karen? Go ahead, Ms. Rodolph.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. I just wanted to speak more as my position as town engineer. You know, having been town engineer for 12 years, I've gotten a lot of feedback from neighbors on both sides of Lynch School over the years about the volume of traffic, and a lot of feedback from parents at Lynch School about the safety. And a lot of these projects have been kind of percolating for years, especially in the Woodside Road corridor. As you get to the intersection with Woodside and Pond Street, we've had Tool Design look at that over the years with money that we've gotten from Eversource. And to Chris's point that, you know, we haven't presented these projects to capital in the past. Frankly, part of it is as the entity who puts forward these sort of traffic calming projects and pedestrian improvement projects, is that we knew that the Lynch School project was coming, right? And so it made sense to wait until we had kind of a more holistic study of the area before we went to capital with kind of piecemeal projects. So I think that this has been a long time coming, and that's why we kind of hadn't brought individual projects to capital, you know, over the past, you know, 5 or so years, knowing that this was building and something that we've worked on with the neighbors as well, letting them know that, you know, the select board policy that we typically try to look at a more holistic approach to traffic improvements around schools. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then again, before I jump in, Mr. Brady, you're all set? Okay. I always like to check on Zoom. It's harder to read the room than it is when we're in person. So I just had a couple questions. One is about collaboration. So I appreciate that Tool Design has done this work in advance of the new Lynch School building being built. There may be some things that change in the area in terms of the number of buses coming through or cars coming through, or the traffic that they actually studied in doing this, coming up with these designs might actually change once the new building opens. And as you think about these projects, I'm curious what your intention is of collaboration, both with our OPM and the school district in keeping in contact about that, because I can see where some of this money or some of these projects may be better held back until after the building opens and we see what some of the traffic patterns look like.
I don't know, Beth, do you want to take that? You want me to take that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm happy to take that. So what Tool has put together are concept level plans, right? So we had some initial neighborhood meetings. We had an initial meeting with TTAC. These are by no means set in stone. We had some good feedback from all parties. And so this is really just the start of the discussion. So I think we only had kind of a $75,000 to start this initial concept level study. And then should we move forward to be able to get the additional money, there'll be a full-fledged design process, which would involve additional public meetings. We'd be happy to, come speak directly to the school committee, and certainly to work further with the Lynch project team itself, as well as school administration, to understand, are the things that we proposed, like on this conceptual level, do they all make sense? Are there ways that we should tweak what we propose? Are there maybe things that we haven't considered that would be a better option? So this is really the start of the conversation, and trying to lay out on the table what what we think the options are, but it is by certainly no means a final design.
Okay. Because thank you for that, Beth, because I was really curious, because I could also see where there could be a construction management issue, looking at where some of those sites are with the heavy trucks going in and out, building the building. And I would certainly hate to tear up all the lovely new safety work that we're doing for kids, with heavy trucks going in to build the new elementary school. So if we choose to go forward in supporting this with you tonight, I would just hope that you would also, agree here that collaboration would be one that would be tightly managed going forward, to make sure that we all get the kind of project the kids deserve in the end.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Mr. Nixon.
Sorry.
Yeah, so when
Sorry,
you
go
were
ahead, Mr.
just,
Nixon.
No, I
Sorry.
was just going to add that I think, Michelle, to your point, certainly, the VO, someone who lives by VO, the sidewalk improvements that were done here were certainly done after, the heavy construction was done. So, a point well taken, and certainly something that, absolutely would be done.
Thank you, both of you. Mr. Nixon.
yeah, I just wanted to share for the committee's benefit, our concept right now, we don't have a contractor on board yet. We got to get through January 7th, but our presumption is that most of the heavy construction traffic will actually be coming in off of Pond Street. So kind of plan left to the west. And that would include things like large triaxles, extended trailers, and so forth. So just think about, steel columns, beams, and so forth coming on site, trying to negotiate those turns. And our expectation is then that, to the extent we can even continue to manage access to the fields, which is something Meg White has been communicating with our rec department, Nick, Director Nick, that we're actually going to be cutting off that access from that side of the site. So there will be, in fact, some increased parking, and I'm just raising this again to get it back on Beth's radar if it wasn't already, that we'll have a lot of people, not just in Winchester, but from out of town, given how the soccer leagues work. Folks will be looking to get access to those fields. Most likely, they're going to have to be parking in the neighborhood along Horn Pond Brook. So it's going to be a challenge during construction, just like the Parkhurst site was during VO, and it'll be even more so at Lynch, because we're just going to have a larger volume of students and staff there as well.
Thank you. Are any other questions from anyone on the committee about this? Mr. Nixon, could you pull the page from the website up again for me?
Which page would you like?
What we're speaking about, the traffic improvements.
Oh, yeah. Let
Can
me
you
go find it. There you go.
Right there in, so what I'd like the committee to consider tonight is whether we would like to make a motion to support the select board in funding traffic improvements in and around the Lynch School neighborhood. So I'd like to have the committee discuss whether that is a motion that we could support.
So for what it's worth, if we were going to take any action, I would respectfully say maybe it's a different question, since the question is not really about the Lynch neighborhood, although clearly that's what underpins this. Would it be more appropriate for us to just decide whether we support question 2, which is basically adjusting the tax levy limit an additional $400,000 for the capital stabilization fund, with the expectation that that would substantially fund neighborhood traffic improvements associated with the Lynch project?
And including this, so you're including question 1 with the second part as well, Mr. Nixon?
This
Or
is all question.
Sorry, question two with the second part as well.
Well, I'm sort of,
The explanation.
I'm sort of, yeah, there's an explanation here, which is we're supporting question two because we have this expectation that,
Yes.
that the funding that this will substantially fund neighborhood traffic and safety improvements in and around the Lynch Elementary School. In other words, it puts some context around support for question two. But question two technically is not about the Lynch neighborhood. So I'm
Right.
trying to say one thing and kind of clarify where the support would be coming from.
Right. Would you be willing to make that motion, Mr. Nixon?
I'd be willing to say that was a motion. Let me try that again. So I move that that the committee express support for ballot question two on January 7th. An operating override assessing an additional $400,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding the capital stabilization fund for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, with the expectation that this operating override substantially funds neighborhood traffic and safety improvements adjacent to the new Lynch Elementary School project.
I'd second that.
Then I am happy to take a roll call vote. Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
All right.
Miss Bolognese. If we can find her.
Aye.
Mr. Brady.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Rudolph and Mr. Mucci, and congratulations, Ms. Rudolph. We didn't congratulate you on your
Thank you.
permanent appointment, so
Appreciate
before
that.
we go,
Thank you all. Thank you for your time tonight.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nucci.
And as we are closing out 2022, we do not yet have anticipated agenda items for our next meeting, but we will certainly let you know as we begin to plan that. Certainly the Lynch Elementary School and the plans around that will be on our agenda in early January, as will budget. So you can anticipate those two things, even though they don't appear here, because it is the season for both. Our next meeting is January 10th, 2023. And with that, unless anybody has any other agenda items that you don't want us to miss. Okay, we will move into executive session for purpose 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the WEA, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee.
So moved.
Second.
And I'll need a roll call vote to adjourn to executive session. Ms. Bolognese,
Aye.
Mr. Brady,
Aye.
Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous. And Dr. Hackett, you will be sending us the executive session link.
I just sent it to you, and thank you for that. Also, just a reminder to the committee and to the public that we will be coming back as the chair has already said. So this session will kind of go dormant, but we will be back from the executive session when that is complete. So with that, we'll see you on the other side.
Frank, before we do that, do you have something already prepared, like on Google Docs? We can just put a slide up that says we're in executive session and we're coming back.
Andrew is hosting the empty session. I would imagine that he will have some spectacular graphics and maybe music to go with it.
I was gonna say fireworks.
For the viewing audience.
Well, just some sort of a slide so
Yes.
people
Tell
they
jokes.
understand.
Yes. He juggles too, by the way, but yes.
And Frank,
Nixon, thank you. I'm sorry to be flipped. That was a very good suggestion. I'm just, it's that time of night for me. I don't know what you expect.
Frank, I don't see the link. Oh, here it is. It came from
just
that.
that.
Got it.
So we
Just sent, should be in your Gmail or
Yeah,
your.
I think I have it now. Thank you.
Okay, see you.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
I guess we're the fastest.
I knew we were gonna win. I could see
Yeah.
it in my eyes. You should see me trying to navigate my phone back to the computer. Oh my God. We are all back. We're all back now. I knew we were gonna win.
We need Michelle. don't-
Guys, our mics are live on WinCam.
Yeah, where's Michelle? Navigate my phone back to the computer. Oh my God. Nope.
We are live on WinCam.
We're all back now. I knew we were gonna win. Our mics are live on WinCam. Where's Michelle?
Feedback from somebody.
I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah, me either.
Chris has WinCam on.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Seamus. So we have returned to public session and we are here to take a public vote on Unit A and Unit C bargaining agreements with the Winchester Education Association. We will need a motion on each of those units.
Like to make a motion to accept the Unit A MOA as has been presented.
Second.
And I will need a roll call vote for that since we are on Zoom. Mr. Brady,
Aye.
Ms. Bolanese,
Aye.
Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
the chair votes aye, and Ms. Rudolph.
I will abstain.
The vote is unanimous and we gratefully thank the Unit A for negotiating in good faith with us and for all of the long conversations that we had at the table where the bargaining team and the teachers were able to come to terms on many of their work-life balance and their beyond just their contract pay. So it was a really great conversation and a really great bargaining session. So now I will take a motion on Unit C, and that is for our ESPs.
I'm happy to make a motion that we accept the December 12th tentative agreement brokered with Unit C. That's our educational support professionals, as voted by the WEA.
Second.
All in favor? Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Ms. Bolanese,
Aye.
Mr. Brady,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
the chair votes aye, and Ms. Rudolph.
I will abstain.
So the vote is unanimous and the Unit C contract is accepted, and similarly grateful for the work of that bargaining unit to come to an agreement, and we appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you to the school committee members who also sat on the bargaining teams, who put in all the hours to work with these teams to come to these agreements. Really appreciate it. Dr. Hackett?
I would just express the same sentiment. I mean, I want to also not just thank them, I want to thank all of you because, you know, you are volunteers and it always amazes me that people run for these positions, and I've never been anywhere with any school department that's had school committee members who put in as much time and effort to do the work and to represent people very well and who have the right focus around kids and what matters for kids. And so I know that as tough as some of those meetings were, I also know that the association definitely felt your care. So when you can negotiate, have hard conversations and disagreements, you know, have people not happy, yet walk away from it with people feeling like they're cared for. I think that's a testament to you and how well you did this. So I appreciate all of that time, and I have to also and want to thank Lori for all her work. She was I think she spent more time on Doodle trying to get dates where we could meet than she did anything else. But she spent an extraordinary amount of time and, you know, was extremely helpful at the table as I'm sure she always has been. So we look forward. I will notify Cheryl that you've taken this action this evening and they've taken their action, and we'll begin the process of putting together the actual formal collective bargaining agreement.
And I echo Dr. Hackett's thanks. I've been on school committee for 6 years. I know Mr. Nixon well outranks me, but I don't think that I have worked with such a dedicated and involved team in understanding both what is going into the wording of the contracts and the financial implications, and thinking through the whole package at each session. So I really appreciate your work, and I really appreciate you also thinking of these contracts in terms of our teachers and our students. So, because that's why we're all here.
Madam Chair, I don't believe you voted publicly on Unit B.
Oh, okay, we can do that as well. So we also have Unit B, the administrative assistance contract. I'm happy to take a motion on that.
I'd make a motion to approve Unit B.
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Mr. Brady,
Aye.
Ms. Bolanese,
Aye.
Mr. Nixon.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and Ms. Rudolph.
I'll abstain.
And the vote is unanimous on Unit B as well. Are we all set, Ms. Kirby and Dr. Hackett? With
All right, thank you.
and with that, that is our work here this evening. And so I can say to everyone, thank you so much for all your work in 2022. And I look forward to working with everyone going forward in 2023. So I hope everybody gets some rest and relaxation over break and comes back ready for school committee budget and revitalized for the lynch vote on January 7th. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, recognizing the Winchester girls varsity ice hockey team just shut out Stoneham 5-0. Motion to adjourn at 7:53.
Does that have to go in the motion, or is that part of the motion?
Nope, doesn't have to go in.
All right.
I'll second it.
And we need a roll call vote. Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Mr. Brady,
Aye.
Mr. Nixon, is there congratulations with that? You don't have one on
We-
the team right
We
now.
can
do you?
always congratulate the girls hockey team and all of our athletes.
Ms. Bolanese,
Aye.
chair votes aye, and we are adjourned.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Guys.
Thank you.
Good night,
Everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Vote January 7th.